Well, polls of political knowledge are pretty rare from the get-go.
I am excited about this poll.
This survey was particularly unique because it tried to probe misperceptions.
We took 11 factual statements by the president that are false and asked people to identify the true version of the statement versus the president's false version.
Making it a little difficult for respondents to tell which is obviously right or wrong. And then we also encourage respondents to say they're not sure to avoid guessing.
If they weren't sure. We didn't encourage them to just say they were not
well,
sure. We took an average of all 11 false Trump statements that we asked about, and we found that on average, and forgive me if I'm exactly wrong, do you have them memorized?
It's 25%, so 25% overall.
Out of the 11 claims, whether it was because the poll respondents admitted that they lacked the knowledge to answer, or whether it was because they knew the facts, or whether it was because they don't pay attention to what Trump says because they don't really find him to be a credible speaker. None of the 11 claims is believed by a majority, of Americans.
We need the wall. We've started building the wall.
The falsehoods that Trump has repeated again and again haven't been adopted by a majority of Americans, and not even a majority of Republicans. The one exception really are his strongest supporters, people who strongly approve of President Trump.
Right, and I think it demonstrates that despite the constant repetition that the president does with these false statements, it's really falling mostly on deaf ears.
And in fact, they're less likely to believe than the average false claim made by Democrats, which we also tested in this survey.
Which of course haven't been repeated or debunked as much because we're not hearing them as frequently.
One of the things that the poll showed is that also Americans view the president differently than other politicians. So they think he more often doesn't tell the truth than your average Democrat or Republican.
49% of Americans thought Trump usually makes flat-out false claims. And that compares to 31% who said this of Republicans in Congress, 27% for Democrats, and 29% for media. So none of the latter three are really doing well or seen as rampant truth tellers in the public's mind, but they're not seen as running afoul of the facts as often as President Trump.
One of the things that we've struggled with as fact checkers is that we write these fact checks, we don't really know whether or not it makes a difference.
We asked 4 questions about what people thought when they saw a fact-checking organization or a news organization say that Trump made a false claim.
If you think of it as a contest, we won.